Hello, in this session we're going to talk about Starburst Global Security. So, from the quote from Spider-Man is, "Remember, with great power comes great responsibility." Presto allows you to access data anywhere, almost anywhere within your company from any kind of a source. And the good of that is it allows your users to not have to wait or request data to be moved to a certain location like a data warehouse or a data lake. To query that data, they can just reach out to those source systems and query them directly. The bad of that is controlling data access. Sometimes you can let users have access to data that they should not be seeing. So the solution for that is implementing Starburst Global Security, and that's what this session's about. So in the agenda here, we're going to talk about global security introduction, something we call system level security in Starburst Presto, policy creation and applications, access policies, how to create those, what they are, role level and masking, secure zones, syncing up with a corporate LDAP or Active Directory server, and then go through a scenario of an example company. So, introduction to global security. So, you can see on the right-hand side we have a diagram that shows a SQL query fabric. That's usually what companies refer to Presto as. And that allows you to a single point of access to all of your data through different BI tools, through different SQL tools, and through a variety of libraries that are available as well. So you can see on the lower part, you have data lakes, data warehouses, NoSQL systems, a lot of different kind of connectors that are available in Presto. But on top of that, there's something called global security, and that's what we call here at Starburst. And so what it is, it's a fine-grained access control. So you create these policies that live over the top of all your different data sources. And you can also add column masking in there as well. So you can allow certain groups or departments to access data. And then when other groups or departments access that data, you can have certain columns that are masked. In addition, there's row level filtering. So you can have access to a table, but you can actually hide data from certain groups or departments or users. Additionally, you can sync up with Active Directory and LDAP servers. So you don't have to create all the users and groups yourselves. And lastly, there's something called a security zone. So it allows you to delegate these policy creations to users and groups. So you don't have to have one person or multiple people do this. You can actually have these different groups that own these systems. They can manage and delegate their own policies. And so this is the architecture of how it works. So we use Apache Ranger because Apache Ranger has been around for many years now. And it's literally just a front-end UI, nice web-based application to create policies. And so what happens is we take a Starburst Presto cluster or multiple clusters and we point them to a Ranger instance. And that's something that we supply here as well at Starburst. So for every query that's issued against a Presto cluster, Ranger is queried to see if there's any policies that match this data source. And if there is, there's a different decision tree that we'll go over how these policies are applied to the query. And in addition, for performance, these policies can be cached in Presto to improve query performance because you don't want, let's say you have a very, very busy system, you have thousands of users, you don't want to be querying this Ranger instance for every single query. So there's some caching available as well. And so something we call system level security, and that is a subset of global security. We'll go over that now. So there's policies in Apache Ranger, and the way they were evaluated is on the right-hand side, and we'll go over this very, very quickly. What it is right now is when we first set up a Starburst Presto system and with global security is everything is denied by default. So instead of allowing everything and then trying to figure out what you want to restrict, it's the other way around, which is actually a benefit because it allows you to not accidentally give access to groups of users or departments. And so first is when a query is executed, the policies are checked to see if there's any deny policies. So if there's any deny policies or if there's no policies at all, that's a deny policy basically. And then from there, it looks for any policies that are allowing access to this object. It could be a session, it could be a connector, a table, a schema, a lot of different objects as well. So that's basically the thing to always remember is deny policies are always looked at first and then allow policies. That's what this flow chart goes through. And so the way it works here is policies are applied on all connectors in Starburst Presto Global Security. So as you can see on the right-hand side over here, we have catalog. So if you had different systems here. You have, let's say, SQL Server, Oracle, you have your data lake. You can apply policies that span multiple connectors, and then we have schemas and tables down here as well. So the different policy types are catalogs, which are basically connectors in Presto. Those are your different source systems. Procedures that are written like user-defined functions, and session properties, and on actual queries. So you can have people look at some of the catalogs, but you can have it so certain users cannot query certain catalogs and systems. Also, there's ability to apply validity period. So you can have you can have a policy that is only effective for a certain amount of days or weeks. And then lastly, we talked about this before, where we can sync up with an LDAP or Active Directory group. So you would just pull in these groups and users from your corporate system, and then you can apply policies on top of those. So it saves a lot of time. So the Ranger interface we'll go through is there's a couple different sections. The top part, the upper left one, is the Access Manager, and that's the one where you'll be using the most frequently. So in here you have resource-based policies. Those are policies to create access to catalog, schemas, procedures, session properties, tables, column masking, pretty much everything within a Presto cluster. You also have tag-based policies as well. You're able to create policies based upon tags. We don't support this right now because this really ties in with something called Apache Atlas. The last thing here is reports. So you can actually have reports on policies. So you can search on different policies. So if you get to a very large organization, it's very difficult to find exact policies that are out there. So you can actually use reports to find that. So auditing combined with independent Solar HDFS, we don't really utilize as much in Apache Ranger. We have something called event logging that logs every single query to an external database, and you can actually query that through Presto as well. There's security zones, and that's something we talked about a couple minutes ago, where we can delegate catalog policy control to certain users or groups. And let's say we have a marketing department, and we want the marketing people to have access to delegate their own policies within their own system. And then lastly is settings, and that's where you have a user and group management. So we'll go over policy creation and the application a little bit here. So there's three different kind of policies that you can create. So first is access control. So access control is obviously the most important. Like I said before, by default everything is denied. So, and we'll go through this when later on in the session we go over an example company. And so we control access for catalog, schemas, procedures, all those different objects. Objects are on deny first, and then you have flexible deny and then allow, and we'll kind of go over some of these different scenarios that you can do here. Next we have column masking. So columns from any table or any connector can be masked. Only one column can be masked at a time, so you can mask multiple columns, so they would just be different policies. And there's different kind of masking types. There's mask, there's partial mask, so you can just show some of the data and then mask the other part of the data. And then lastly is row filtering. The way row level filtering works is basically you're adding a where clause. So if somebody says select star from a table, if there's any row level filtering on that table, it'll add it to basically a where clause at the end. So like number 3 here, I show that you can actually add a where clause where the nation doesn't equal 9. So if anybody queries that, it's seamless to the end user. They just won't see any rows where the nation doesn't equal 9. So they'll see all the other rows, but they won't see 9. And so here's an example of access policy. So on the left-hand side here, we're applying the policy name. And so I called it marketing policy catalogs. And so this is for the marketing department. So this is the different systems that I have in my test system here. I have SQL Server, Snowflake, Hive, Delta Lake, and MySQL. Hive is the actual data lake. And so I'm allowing this person to see all of these different objects. And then down here here's the allow conditions. So I have a group here called marketing, and then I'm allowing the marketing to do select, insert, and ownership to all these different systems. So this is really real world, but just wanted to show you how this works. And so what happens is I don't have Postgres in here, and that's another connector in my system. But what happens if I try to select, and I'm the marketing group, I try to select from the Postgres connector, I'm going to get access denied because I don't have access over here. As you can see, if I had Postgres in here, that would work. You could also use multiple entries in here. You could see you could do wildcards as well, and then you could set different permission levels, as you can see that I've done here. And then deny policies, again, get evaluated first. Next is column masking, very similar to the access policies. So here I'm just listing one column though. So out of my data lake, ADOS Gen 2 is an example for Azure, and then I have a customer name. And what I'm saying here down at the bottom, you can see if my presentation, there we go, down the lower left, you'll see marketing interns. So I don't want anybody that belongs in the marketing interns to be able to see the customer name. As you can see here, I have an example query where I'm selecting the customer key and the name, but I'm actually in the marketing interns. So as you can see here, I'm getting just XXXX. So I'm actually masking that data to anybody that. So what's great is it's seamless to the end user. They're just querying this, and if their policy matches, then they're going to see a mask. If not, they'll actually see the customer name here. Very, very easy to do. And then lastly is row level filtering. Very similar to masking, is where you're still putting down a catalog schema and table. And then for this example, I'm filtering out a nation key equals 24. So you can see on the bottom here, I have marketing as my group. I have down at the bottom select, and then my nation key equals 24. So what's going to happen is I'm not going to, actually, and this is the other way around. This is actually not filtering out. This is only allowing nation key equals 24. So as you can see, you could really limit different groups down to the different data that they see. So lastly is the policy validity period. I don't know if this is used all that much, but it's a nice option to be able to have. So if you only have maybe a group that's available that they only want them to see for the next couple of days, they're doing a short-term report or something like that, you can create a new policy and then add a validity period onto it. So for this example, I'm giving July 20th to August 19th, and they're able to see this data. Let's say I can add this on an access policy, masking, or row level filter. So reports, we'll go over those very quickly. This is just a nice option in here that you can search by different policy names or different departments who own certain policies. So when you come into the reporting part of it, you'll see the different policy names, what resources that are on, and different kind of conditions on there. You can actually export this data to an Excel, CSV, or JSON for reporting. Security zones. So security zones allow you to have different departments or users delegate their own policies. So in this example, I have a marketing security zone, and then you can see down here, I'm actually giving this on the SQL Server catalog. I'm allowing the marketing group to create and maintain and administer their own policies here. So that can be done, especially if you have a very large organization or you have sub IT units. Let's say marketing has their own IT unit and they have their own data governance, and so they're allowed to just manage their own access to their own system. LDAP Usersync. So as you can see in this diagram here, we have the coordinator here, and this is where SQL clients actually issue queries against the coordinator. So these are BI tools. These are all your users. And so what happens is we're going to pull out, and we have Ranger over on the right hand side here. So we have this policy checking arrow right here. So every query that's going to execute is going to be able to pull, it's going to query Ranger. I have the policy cache here. Remember, for very, very busy systems that we don't want to overwhelm the Ranger system. So we'll actually have a policy cache in here as well for certain systems. But on the bottom here, we have a corporate LDAP or Active Directory. And so we have something called user auth. So when you're a SQL Presto user logs in, we can actually authenticate by the password and user into the corporate LDAP and Active Directory. But we can also pull that same information out into Ranger. So we can pull all the groups and users that you would like into Ranger, and then you can create policies based upon those existing departments or groups. So instead of creating all the users and all your groups by hand in Ranger, you can just pull this information out. And this is constantly synced. So if you have new employees that are joining and they're added to a group, well, that'll be automatically pulled into Ranger, and there's nothing you have to do. So if you already have policies set up, let's say in marketing again, and you have a new user that's joined, well, and they're a part of that group, marketing group that we're pulling into Ranger already, there's nothing you have to do. Syncing tips is we like to recommend for companies that don't know a lot about their internal LDAP is use something called LDAP Search. It's just a free tool. You can query your LDAP and figure out what groups and what users you want to be able to pull down from your Active Directory or your LDAP server. Usersync runs in its own container in our Kubernetes solution, and then logs can be found just by looking at the Usersync. And we have some full documentation down here in our documentation site, which is docs.starburstdata.com. So let's go over an example company. This is just something I created. I called it Company X. And then I have 3 departments: marketing, finance, and operations. And then I have a sub group in here called a sub department called marketing interns. And so I have different users over here called Ted Marketing, Vishal Operations, Nancy in Finance, and then I have Kevin the Marketing Intern. So my different data sources, just to keep it simple, I have ADLS, which is just an Azure data lake. I have SQL Server, which I'm calling the marketing database, and then I have Postgres, which is the point of sale system database. So just very, very simple. So I'm going to now create policies based upon these systems and those departments. And so if you look over here on the left, I have the marketing. Well, I want marketing to be able to have read-only and write to a sandbox area within the data lake. And then SQL Server, I want full access. Again, SQL Server is the marketing database. For finance, I want them to have read-only to the data lake, and I also want them to write to their own sandbox within the data lake. So sandboxes are great for being able to pull a bunch of data from systems and create little roll-ups or aggregates or just testing or subsets of data. What's great that you do that in the data lake, that way you can have full parallelism, and then it just gives each of these departments a place just to pull data and play around with data. And then the way I'll show you what we're going to do in the policies is we're going to make it so marketing can't see finance's sandbox and the other way around. It's very easy to do that with policies. So again, finance has full access to SQL Server and Postgres as well, because they're finance. They get to control the purse strings. So we have operations over here. We also want operations to have read-only in the data lake, write to their own sandbox, and then full access to the point of sale system, which is Postgres. Notice they don't have access to the SQL Server database. So here's my policy layout here. We'll go over a couple of these. I'm not going to go over all of them, but this is how I laid out, and this is how a lot of our customers lay out their policies. It's going to be by groups. So they're going to look at the marketing group first and create a policy called marketing DB. And so that allows them full access. And then we have a group that covers everybody that's going to give read-only access to the data lake for each of those departments. And then we have another marketing group here, and this is that sandbox. So we want the marketing group to have full sandbox to just their area. It's a schema called marketing sandbox. And then we only want read-only for the interns. So we don't want the interns that belong in the marketing group. We want them to have access to the sandbox, but we don't want them to be able to write. They're just interns. And then we have very, very similar policies for finance, operations, and marketing. And then we also have 2 masking here. So we want to mask for the interns. We showed you that already for the customer name. And then we want a row filter for restrict anybody that's looking at for Nasha key equals 19. So next we'll go into Ranger and we'll kind of show you some of these. All right, now we get to the fun part, is the demo part. So here's my different policies that I've gone over. I'm going to go in and start running some queries and show you some of my policies. So I'm using Mission Control here. I have a small cluster up, and this is actually on the Azure environment. If I look at my data sources, I have the Hive catalog, which is actually ADLS Gen 2. I have my marketing SQL Server database and my point of sale system in Postgres. So my cluster is just a really small cluster, it's just one active worker. I may just go ahead and make that I'll add another node to that. And that'll actually deploy another node here in a minute. So while that's going, I will go into Ranger. Here we have our service here called Starburst Enterprise Presto. And then we'll go into here. This is the tour of Ranger here. So we have the settings over here on the right. We have user groups and roles. Here's my different users I have set up for the demo. So Ted Marketing, Vishal Operations, Nancy Finance, and Kevin the intern, we call him. Here's my different groups I have: marketing, finance, operations, those kind of in line with our example company. And then we have the interns here as well. I haven't set up any roles yet, but you can have roles and you can have multiple groups in a role as well if you need to. So I come back over here to my Access Manager. and click into here. Here's all my policies that I've created. All these all ones here are on by default. And I have the select on system metadata. This allows someone to log into Presto but not see anything. Just so they don't have to, if they don't have any access or anything like that, they won't get any errors. They'll just won't be able to see anything. So this policy on system and the schema is JDBC to public. That allows them just to at least log in. So here we have this marketing and marketing DB. So marketing means the name of the department, because I did marketing department-based policies. You could do the other way around. You could have source-based policies. So you just look at a source and then you grant all the permissions and policies out from that. I did it the other way around. So all my policies will start with a department that will either be all for everybody or marketing, finance, or operations. So if we look at this, this is giving marketing access to their own database, which is that SQL Server database. So if I drill into this policy, I can see that on the catalog called marketing, which is that SQL Server database, I'm giving a star on schema table. So it's full access to the marketing database. This is just for the group marketing. And then I'm giving them full permissions on this. Select, insert, everything on that. So that's that policy. The next one we'll go down to is all data lake. Since I can't have duplicate policies on the same objects, I'm creating one called all data lake. So it's basically giving select access to everybody on the data lake. So all the different groups here, marketing, operations, and finance. If there's other groups, they won't have access to the data lake. So let me go cancel out of here. Let's go through the marketing sandbox. This is something else that allows just a schema within the data lake be available to a group or a department, and they can create tables, they can drop tables. It's kind of a sandbox area for them to play around with. So under my data lake, under this Hive catalog, I have a schema called Marketing SB, Marketing Sandbox. So I'm allowing marketing to have full access. I'm allowing the marketing interns just to be able to select from objects into there, because I don't want them creating objects. And then down below, I'm saying deny all others access, so nobody else will be able to see this. So if I come into my SQL tool, which I use dbeaver for a SQL tool, so we'll come over here, we'll open up a new SQL window here. And as you notice here, I have different connections. So I have demo, and this is by the name of the user. So I have finance, marketing, marketing interns, and operations. If I come in here as the admin user, I have full access to the POS database, marketing, and my ADLS, which is not in here. So let me refresh. I don't have. This is why, because I am not given the admin user, which doesn't belong to anybody, any access to the Hive, to the data lake. So that's actually a good catch there. So just because the word admin doesn't mean anything. So if I come down in here, let's go pick on marketing. So if I come down here and say refresh, I have access to my data lake through Hive. And then here I have different schemas. So I have the ADLS Gen 2, and then here's my marketing sandbox. I can also see the marketing database, which is the SQL Server database. So I have access to that as well. But notice there's no POS system in here because the marketing user doesn't have access. The marketing group doesn't have access to the PO system. It's loading the different database objects here from the SQL Server. So, and then let's go to interns will be basically the same thing. They just have different privileges. So if you look at the operations has access to the data lake, and they have access to the POS system, which is a Postgres database. So they can see this, but again, marketing can't see that. So you can segregate different systems by different groups, so you can allow people to see only the source system that you want them to see. If I go back to finance here, finance has access to all these different systems, read-only. So they have access to the data lake, marketing, and the POS system. So if I come back and look at the different policies I have here, so operations has full access to the POS database. And if I go look at finance, finance has access to all the different systems, read-only access to all the systems. That's why they were able to see those systems. Plus they have their own finance sandbox. So if I go back into finance, notice I only have the finance sandbox, and then I have all the regular data lake tables in here as well. And now we'll run a couple of queries. So at the top here, I'm connected to my marketing group, as TED Marketing. I'm going to select from my data lake here. And I'm going to go out and pull some information here. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create a table in the marketing sandbox. But to show you how the rules work, I'm going to connect as, let's say, finance. Finance does not have access to this marketing sandbox. So I'm going to try to create this table. Well, it's not going to allow me. Cannot create a table in this sandbox. Now I'm going to come over, switch back to marketing, and run the exact same query. And then it's going to be able to create this table in the marketing sandbox because I am the marketing folks. So if I come back to marketing now, if I go to my Hive and marketing sandbox, go to my tables, I have this customer temp here that I just created. So I could drop that table, I can insert data into it, I could create more tables and that type of stuff. So next is I'm going to try to select from the POS system as marketing. So I'm in marketing right now. I'm going to try to select, I can't even see it over here, but just in case, maybe somebody knows about it. So I'm going to try to create, oh, access denied. I can't access that POS. So then again, if I switch to the operations and I run that exact same query, I can't do that. I can do this now as operations. So I have my data. And lastly, I'm going to show this masking. So let's go over and look at this masking rule. So I'm going to mask all interns so they can't see the customer name. So on Hive ADOS Gen 2, my customer table, my column name is name, and I'm going to mask customer name for marketing intern. So I just have the marketing intern selected here, and then my type is mask. So let's go back and try to run this query as interns. So I actually have marketing intern as a user. If I select this table, now I have the name as masked. Now if I just go back to just regular marketing again, if I select that same query, I'm going to get that customer information back. And then lastly, let's go over a row filter. A row filter basically just adds a where clause, remember, to any queries that are executed. So against this, in the data lake, I have a nation table. I want to filter at any nation key equals 18. And that's to the public. And that's just as an example. So I don't want anybody to see where these rows are equal 18 here. So basically, here's my row level filter. It says nation key does not equal 18. So if I come back in here and run this query where select star from this table, order by 1, which is the nation key, I'll be able to see the data coming back. But if I come down, I'll notice that 18 is not listed here. So it's seamless to the end user. They won't be able to see data as if you have policies against it, which is really nice to have. All right, lastly here, I just want to have a little fun and bring up a different tool other than just a SQL tool. I have Power BI here up, and I'm connected to Starburst Presto cluster that I have in my demo environment, just to show you that it doesn't really matter what client you connect to. So I'm going to come in here and pull out of my data lake. And remember that ADOS Gen 2, we're going to pull out of here and we're going to go look at customer information. So what I want to do is come back into Ranger and my masking. I had it just on interns, but now I'm just going to put it on public. I want to mask the customer information for anybody that's connected to public. And so if I come back into just my customer information, and I'm going to go ahead and reload that, and it's actually, see now, it's masked here. So it doesn't really matter which SQL client I connect to. Through all my reporting, I can have limitations, I can have row filters, any of that information. It doesn't really matter which client that I'm connecting to. All right, I think that wraps it up here. We'll go back to this one slide from earlier where we talk about what global security is. So basically it just allows a fine-grained access control over all of your different data sources that you're querying from Presto. It has full user group and Active Directory LDAP synchronization as well. And it handles column masking, row level filters, security zones, all the different features that you expect in an enterprise product. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. Our website is starburstdata.com and contact us if you have any questions. Thank you.